we are back, hopefully better than ever, with what is going to be our last series of the Ungoro meta. So, of course, as we all know, Knights of the Frozen Throne did release today. Pretty exciting expansion, a lot of new stuff going into it, but that conversation is a topic for another time, as we are living in the past a little bit, but we're going to be doing our last series that without the Frozen Thrones. This will still be the Ungoro meta. We're doing a conquest series between our reigning champion, so to speak, in Goodlife, and a newcomer in Narkotikz. And once again, I will be casting the games. Today I am joined by a fellow member of Judgment Gaming and my good friend Owen. How are we doing today?
Yeah, I can't complain so far. It's been a great day.
All right, nice. So let's go ahead and dive right into what we're going to be looking at today. You guys can see on your screen the decks that have been chosen by our competitors as well as their bans. So just a quick rundown. We're going to look at Goodlife's lineup first. It's not terribly different from what he used against you. So he's going to be bringing Mage, Paladin, and Priest, with his Druid having been banned out by Narkotikz. So before we move over to the other side, let's run down that lineup real quick. Owen, just in, let's say, 10 seconds or less on each of those classes, what kind of deck do we expect to see from him?
So with Priest, I definitely am expecting a very similar build to what he brought last time. The Dragon Control variant is a very, pretty consistent variant as far as just the kind of thing that I've been familiar with seeing him play. So I expect that. For Mage, it's kind of an open question. I haven't really seen Goodlife play a lot of Mages before, so I'm not really sure exactly what it is that he's going to be bringing. As far as his last class, it was, which one again? It was the Paladin. I'm expecting a pretty consistent control Paladin out of him, like he played last time in our last set. If I had to venture a guess for Mage, I would say it's probably going to be some sort of hybrid tempo, tempo/freeze Mage, which seems to be very popular on the ladder.
Yeah, the hybrid freeze Mage definitely is popular. So speaking of popular, though, the most, I would say, consistent and popular Paladin build right now is the slightly more aggressive Murloc Paladin, but you don't expect him to be going that route. You expect more of the long game control style like he played before?
Yeah, I don't think that particular playstyle appeals to Goodlife sensibility. Judging by his lineup, he tends to favor more controlling decks, so that's something that I would be more likely to expect coming from him.
Okay. And that'll be interesting to see if true, because then that means that he has a pure control lineup, which maybe if Narkotikz picks up on that early is something that he can kind of use to his advantage during the Mulligan stage and really almost knowing what to expect. So let's look at the other side. Where Narkotikz is bringing Shaman, Warrior, and Hunter, which is a slightly more unusual choice and something that I know you and I were both a little surprised to see. But with that said, we do know this player a little bit, and Hunter is his favorite / most played class, so maybe it shouldn't be as surprising as it was.
Yeah, knowing a little bit about the player who's, about Narkotikz personally, Hunter is one of his most favorite classes, and so it's not especially surprising to see him bring it. Although it is surprising to see it on a tournament lineup, as it is a little bit more of an unconventional choice. Usually the longer, more consistent controlling decks are usually favored in tournament play. So it'll be really interesting to see how that transfers over to the table.
All right, and we can just talk about the bans real quick. Narkotikz did ban away Goodlife's Druid, perhaps... I guess the question is, did he anticipate a token Druid, which maybe would have just been able to run over several of his lineups, or if he was thinking about Jade Druid and just didn't want to worry about that long game that he just can't possibly win, especially with a deck like Hunter, which is pretty susceptible to that kind of thing.
My suspicion is that he was probably anticipating some sort of token list. It's a little bit more of a frightening and polarizing matchup. Although, Druid has a lot of scary archetypes available to it right now, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was concerned about all three.
Right. Okay. And on the other side, Narkotikz Paladin was banned away by Goodlife. What do you feel like the thinking was there?
I think that Paladin's just a really well-rounded class, and it's kind of difficult to guess whether it's going to be a more aggressive matchup, mid-range, or control, since it's one of the few classes in the metagame right now that actually has access to all three of those variants, which makes mulligan decisions very difficult, especially without information about the player personally. So I think that perhaps to try and avoid the headache, Goodlife was thinking of just removing it from the equation.
Okay, cool. So obviously we know a little bit about each of these players, but we're certainly not experts on either of them. So I guess just looking at the lineups, how do you see this particular matchup playing out?
Depending on whether or not Narkotikz is going to be able to capitalize on the aggressive decks that it seems like he's brought to his lineup, I think there's a really strong possibility that I might be able to really punish the slower controlling strategies on Goodlife's lineup, especially some of the weaker, some of the decks that are weaker to control, such as some of the paladin draws, or some of the priest draws, depending on whether or not they draw their mass removal on time.
Right. Okay. So right now, going into it, before anything started, you feel like Narkotikz is a little bit favored here?
I think so, actually. I think the combination of him being familiar with his with the aggressive strategies that he tends to favor, and the fact that some of the control decks in the current metagame can be a little bit punished by aggressive strategies, I think tips the hand in his favor.
Okay. Very cool. All right. So that kind of sets us up. Any final thoughts? Anything closing before we get started in the games?
I mean, truthfully, I can't think of any better way to send off Ungoro than having all 8 of the Ungoro classes represented in this tournament game. So,
yes,
I'm definitely really excited to see that.
That's funny. Yeah, no, absolutely. All 8 classes that currently exist are here and represented. So yeah, this should definitely make for a good match. So I'm going to go ahead and let our competitors know that they are clear to get started. And as soon as they get that first game going, we will head right into it. So do you want to make any predictions to what classes we'll be seeing start things out?
If I had to take a guess, I'm going to... I would say that Narkotikz is going to start off strong with his Hunter. It's what he's most comfortable with, and I could see him wanting to utilize that early on to try and put the fear of God in a Goodlife, so to speak. For Goodlife, I'm not sure. I think he's going to try and start off slow. So perhaps bringing his priest would be my prediction.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense, right? If you want to establish dominance, so to speak, go with the class that your opponent least expects to see and then beat them with it. Turn 1 could be a pretty decent psychological advantage to have, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. We do happen to know that Goodlife had been thinking about banning Narkotikz Warrior, so it's kind of interesting to see that he had eventually opted on a different class. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it really depends on kind of what he was afraid of, I suppose. Was he... I mean, I wonder if at this point if you kind of anticipate Pirate Warrior, maybe he just did not want to deal with that level of aggression. Given that Goodlife does tend to want to play those controlling decks, the long game, perhaps he was just afraid of getting run over too quickly by a Pirate Warrior and not really having a chance in one of those games, and wants to just give himself the best chance possible to win all 3. So
right, and with that,
that's really what I can see.
Right, and with that, it does look like our players are getting underway.
They are, and we have actually a very quick opening from Narkotikz with the good old Bloodsail Corsair into patches. So quick 1 damage, and you were right, Goodlife did go ahead and queue up the priest first, so we will have to wait to see Narkotikz famed Hunter.
Indeed, yeah, and this looks like it's going to be kind of a weird draw for Narkotikz. The aggressive shaman decks, they really kind of want to get to the board early and make it very difficult. And while we did say that it was for the Ungoro meta, we are going to see some Discover effects producing some of the new Knights of the Frozen Throne cards. So not quite as pure as we would have hoped, but that being the case, it'll still be really interesting to see if any of those do make an appearance. But as I was saying, I think that some of the minions that Goodlife's priests are going to be able to stick to the board early will do a lot of work in trying to help control this board of 1/1s and 1/2s that Narkotikz is going to try and amass during the early turns of the game.
No, that is definitely true. With that said, Narkotikz has a pretty fast start. Obviously, the Notice by Historian can contest the patches or the Murloc. But with that said, it only kills 1 minion, so we could even see an early evolve come out from Narkotikz just to try to build up that board presence that isn't so easily contested by a 1-attack minion. And just for our viewers at home, and I do apologize for overly being unable to display the Discover effects, we do see a Dragonfire Potion picked up. It is... I feel like we're going to see an evolve here. I feel like we're just going to see double face and then evolve. I feel like Narkotikz is realizing that he has a pretty slow start, or maybe not. He will just go ahead and opt for the trade in hopes to get a
taking it very slow
later. Yeah, which may or may not work in his favor. I can understand the line of thinking, but I guess, he doesn't have the benefit we do of being able to see Goodlife's hand, but we can see a very good curve coming out very soon, with the Glimmerroot on 3, Twilight Drake on 4, Operative on 5, Bookworm on 6. We see a very strong curve coming out from Goodlife, where it's probably not going to benefit Narkotikz to take this one super slow.
Right, and this is something that I kind of touched on in my re-review of the game that I played against Goodlife, and that it's really important to identify whether or not you're the aggressor in a game like this. And I think Narkotikz may be making the mistake here of misidentifying what role he should be playing and valuing things like early minion trading and such a little bit too early, giving Goodlife the time to actually hit the 6th mana crystal to deploy that Dragonfire Potion.
No, I strongly agree, and this is where things are going to get really tricky for him. Again, when you do play that slowly, when you're the more aggressive deck, and just for those at home, yeah, there you go. The Lich King picked up off of Stonehill Defender, so that's a new interaction that we haven't gotten a chance to see just yet.
And we may get a chance to actually entertain the full power of the Lich King, as it looks like Goodlife's hand doesn't match up particularly well against an 8/8 taunt right now.
Not at the moment, no. And that might depend on how long he decides to hold on to Dragonfire Potion for, although against an Evolved Shaman, I would have to imagine that you're probably, against a full board like this, going to want a Dragonfire Potion as early as possible to prevent the Bloodlust and or Evolved shenanigans from getting too far out of hand. So it is possible that an 8/8 taunt might be more than he bargained for.
Right, and again, since this is the first day of the expansion, it might not even be something that's on Goodlife's radar just yet, depending on how familiar he is with the cards that have just come out today.
Right, and I would almost assume that it's probably something that he's just not thinking about, given that it might even be the first time that he's playing against the possibility of that, even being something to think about. So the nice part here for Narkotikz now, having picked up the Doppelgangster, is that if Goodlife does go ahead and Dragonfire this board, he can immediately reload with the Doppelgangster Evolve combo.
Absolutely.
So we were talking about this possibly being a bad spot for Narkotikz, and really he does not have a lot of power on board. But if Goodlife almost, panic presses that Dragonfire Potion button, being afraid of, I said, either Evolve or Bloodlust or both, then it actually puts Narkotikz in a really good spot to punish. Although, he just picked up a second Dragon, and we see the emote coming out. The oops emote coming, so I imagine, yeah, so there's going to be the Doppel Evolve that we talked about, although a second Dragonfire Potion was picked up last turn, which is what I was alluding to before, which will just about clear the board.
Right, with exception of the 6/7.
Right.
Alternatively, he could try and hold off and utilize the Devolve that he did pick up earlier on off the Curious Glimmerroot, if the board becomes too sticky. But if it does fire off that Dragonfire Potion, that does mean that Narkotikz is going to have a pretty clear board to deploy this Lich King into.
Right. This actually, it looks like a fairly tough spot for Goodlife, all things considered. Because the thing is, I feel like Devolve might be a little risky, because you actually got a really bad result from the Cold Light. That was your, one of the worst possible. So I think this line of play actually makes a lot more sense. To trade in and just leave the 5/5.
Yeah, but that being said, that means that now he's going to get to deploy the Lich King.
And this is personally my first time seeing that entrance, and that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, we did get a chance to see that during the Brian Kibler Ben Brode stream, and we get our first look at Doom Pact, one of the new Death Knight cards that the Lich King provides you, destroying all minions and then removing the top card of your deck for each minion destroyed, giving Narkotikz access to a pretty powerful way to climb back into this board if it gets out of hand.
Whoa!
Okay.
Archmage Antonitis off of the Devolve, and we can see Narkotikz has spells that he can cast. He can just Devolve if he wants to, like, just to get a Fireball in hand. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, and the thing is that with that 7 health, that does put the Archmage outside of range for a card like Dragonfire Potion, and I do think that Deathwing might just be a turn too slow for what's going to be his real problem, which is going to be getting Fireballed out of this game.
Yeah. And not a super strong result off the Netherspite Historian either.
Looks like he's off he was opting to go with the value play. But truthfully, I don't think that the game is going to last that long.
No, not with an Archmage Anthonitis staring you down when you're already behind.
Yeah, that was probably one of the worst results that Goodlife could have rolled there. I'm sure he was not happy to see that result.
Yeah, there wasn't much that was worse than that. So we can see here that there's a lot of ways to get fireballs in the hand for Narkotikz. This one's suddenly looking very grim for Goodlife.
Although I don't think I would have started this turn with a totem call.
No. That leaves him with not enough mana to cast a fireball, because he basically had a free fireball cast if he wanted it, which I'm really not sure why. I mean, I guess trying to just set up the 2-turn lethal, which is fine.
Right.
I don't know what the totem really did for him, though.
Well, I mean, the only thing I could think is that he was trying to roll spell power, but I think in this instance you were much better off trying to turn the devolve, the second devolve in his hand, into another fireball. That, at the very least, could have set up a lot more reach in his hand than currently he's going to have access to.
Right, exactly. I'm not playing around that second Dragonfire Potion at all. Because the +1 spell power really didn't change anything. That's the thing.
Of course, if he does roll a spell power totem now, that would give him lethal.
Yes. Yes, it would. He doesn't get it. So he'll just go ahead and pass, holding on to the rest of the cards in his hands.
And how do you feel about that play? Holding on to the fireballs. His mana is going to be a little bit crimped for turns that he does want to deploy those. Do you think that holding on to them was the right move?
The only thing I can think of is that since he's not familiar with Goodlife's list, he doesn't know if he's running any large heals, like, say, a Greater Healing Potion or something like that. So just in case there was something big coming out, that in case he needed the fireballs for removal instead of direct damage, he just didn't want to put himself in a position where he might have accidentally lost a game.
But with that, it looks like the game has been locked up by Narkotikz with a devolve into a double fireball with 5 damage from Thing from Below. So with that, it looks like Narkotikz takes the first game.
Yeah, so that was actually, it feels almost like a pretty easy win for him, I want to say. There wasn't really a point in that game where he was losing. So it was an interesting game because we felt like at the beginning he wasn't really correctly recognizing his need to be the aggressor, but just given, I guess, how slowly Goodlife was forced to play it, that it ended up not hurting him too much in the long run.
Yeah, and I think that might be a recurring theme that we might see in this set with Narkotics's, aggressive lists really punishing those slower starts that the control decks that Goodlife has are going to be susceptible to.
Right. I feel like it's going to be very... If it is a Pirate Warrior, I feel like it'll be very easy for Narkotikz to find a win with that deck, even if he doesn't get it on the first in the first matchup that he plays it with. I feel like it'll be easy for him to get a win with it. So then it's really just a question of Hunter, which of course is his personal favorite class. So I feel like him getting that first win with a Shaman was actually very important for him.
Mm-hmm. Although I do happen to know that he is somewhat familiar with playing Shaman. I do know that he did happen to hit Legend with the deck last month, so he should be pretty familiar with the way the deck plays. So it is a possibility that perhaps this is one of the decks that he's more comfortable with in his list. So I guess we will see what happens going forward. Any predictions, Justice, as to what deck do you think Goodlife is going to bring next? Do you think he's going to run it back with Priest?
Based on what happened last time, I'm going to guess no. So if I remember correctly, and perhaps I'm wrong here, and you can correct me if you remember differently than I do, but I think last time when he lost, he just chose to switch decks just to give himself a different look, a different avenue, and then came back to it later on. So I believe that's what happened. So I think he'll go for something different. Both a Mage and Paladin will play pretty differently than Priest, so I think he's just going to want to go for something different, try to get himself back in a better mindset, just take a game back, even up the series, and then kind of go from there.
I see. My personal pick is, I think if I were in his shoes, I would select Paladin, assuming that I'm going to switch decks. Knowing that your opponent could be bringing in a Hunter deck, you really don't necessarily want to be playing with a Mage, who may not necessarily have the tools to be able to stay alive long enough if the Hunter produces an aggressive draw.
Right.
So with that, it looks like we will be able to start the next round.
Alright, so just letting our competitors know to get started.
Any predictions for what Narkotikz is going to bring?
Well, the fact that he didn't bring Hunter first makes me almost wonder if he wants to save his most comfortable deck for last. Because I feel like you either take it first or last, right? You either take it first to try to set the pace into your favor, or you take it last to try to finish off the series. So my guess would be we'll see his warrior.
I see. I think that's a pretty solid prediction, certainly. Saving the deck that you're most comfortable with for last makes a lot of sense in the instance where one of your decks loses early on. So I could certainly see that being the case,
Right.
and I will certainly look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, because I think if you're really taking all things into consideration, and I talk about the mental aspect of things a lot, but I think that in the case where if you assume okay, it's not going to be a clean sweep. Well, I was going to say that it's probably easiest to not tilt with your most comfortable deck, but here we go, proving me wrong, and we will see the Hunter, and I was right, the Goodlife changed deck, so hey, I'm 50-50 on that. So there's something. We will see that. So we do see a change in decks from Goodlife, and he does have a strong start with the Mana Worm.
And it does look like Goodlife decided to bring a Secret Mage deck to the table. Certainly a deck that's capable of producing some very high-tempo moves early on in the game. Do you think that's going to be enough to allow him to out-tempo the Hunter deck?
I think it very well may be, especially as we see the start with the Jeweled Macaw. The Mana Worm trades very easily into that if he wants it to. I think that Secret Mage is a generally strong deck. And yeah, I think that in this particular matchup, with a decent start, as he appears to have, and we see a discounted Meteor coming off of the Primordial Glyph, which is a pretty good one as well.
Yeah, although
I do like the Secret Mage chances.
Right, although I would question the decision to not clear away the 1/1. I feel like there are a lot of cards in Hunter that could potentially punish not clearing away minions when possible.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that things like Crackling Razor Maw can be
certainly come to mind.
a big deal. I mean, even just getting +3 attack allows him to trade it and clear your Mana Worm, whereas just attacking it there on that turn means your Mana Worm survives still with 2 health. So yeah, I do question that just a little bit. And, again,
and even now, it looks like he's. I mean, not that he really had a clean way to do that. The only other consideration I could think is that maybe he could have given some thought to putting down a counter spell to set up a turn 4 5/5.
Right, and that's fine. And I do agree, actually, in that case, that clearing away the Rat Pack would not have made a whole lot of sense, because then he just gets a trade for free with his 1/1. So I think that particular one was fine, but I mean, I guess there's the question of, do you play the counter spell to try to set up, as you said, a 5/5 on turn 4, or do you just go ahead and use the hero power to clear? I don't think there was an answer there that made him particularly happy either way, so he just went with that. With that said, I will say he played the turn fairly quickly and maybe didn't run through all of his options before making the play that he made.
Right, which is another thing that I definitely have touched upon previously in another article that I had written, that it's very important to take your time, especially in higher stakes situations like a tournament match, because you really want to be sure to run through all the different iterations. And it does look like Goodlife is really utilizing his time on his turn today. Going to the rope, will he be able to make a move before the time runs out?
Yeah, I wonder if we had some connection issue here, because he's just not doing anything.
And it looks like maybe he was experiencing some sort of connection issue as his turn 4 passed away without making a single move. I do think that that would be really unfortunate for Goodlife. I'm sure if we could be a fly on the wall, he would probably have some very choice words for the situation like that. And it could be very costly, as not interacting with the Hunter's board on this turn could result in a lot of excess damage that he doesn't have the ability to claw back from.
Yeah, that's pretty unfortunate. I'm messaging him now to see if he's still connected. Claims his screen is frozen. Now, I'll be honest, since this is just an exhibition match and not an official tournament, we don't really have any official rules in place for how to handle this. All I can come on top of my head.
Yeah, and it appears that Narkotikz is asking if he disconnected.
Yeah. I'm gonna see maybe about offering the players a remake. Although we do get to see one of the new cards as well, Arphis. Alright, so those are the Goodlife conceded.
We will go ahead.
I'm going to give Narkotikz the option of a remake. I think is really all we can do here.
Most certainly, and if he chooses to accept, then that would be great for us. We get to see more Hunter action. I think locking the players into the same decks would make a lot of sense in this particular situation. Normally in a tournament, you don't really get the option of that. If you get disconnected, or if you experience some technical difficulties, it's kind of pieces fall where they may. But since this is a lower stakes match without any sort of
Narkotikz is being a good sport. He immediately agreed to the remake.
Yes, it's good to see some sportsmanship. I'm sure will make Goodlife feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Okay. So with the same classes, who do you think is favored in that?
I believe that if both decks draw reasonably well, I think the Secret Mage is slightly favored.
I see. Why is that?
It's good. It is a decent tempo deck, and it can contest the board early, again, depending on what kind of plays he chooses to make. As we saw, he played kind of quickly on that one turn and chose not to take a free trade into a 1-1, which could have backfired. But if he plays a slightly more board-centric style, Hunter has a very difficult time coming back when it doesn't have early board. And the Mage deck is certainly capable of making sure that happens. So I believe, and I'm just kind of accidentally showing you guys the conversation there. We'll switch back over to our pretty faces. So I think the Secret Mage is favored in that matchup. And I said with a decent draw on both sides, I think Goodlife should have a reasonable chance of evening this series up, and it looks like our competitors are just going right back ahead and getting into games. So we will once again see Narkotikz Hunter versus Goodlife's Mage, hopefully with no connection issues or anything else this time.
Let's see. And we see both players immediately throw away their opening hands with a bunch of expensive cards in either of them. And it does look like we'll see Narkotikz open up with a Jeweled Macaw, this time providing a Stone Tusk Boar as opposed to Arphis.
Right, which is slightly less exciting, although once again we do have Mana Worm into the Macaw, although this time the roles are reversed as to who went first, so it does change the dynamic a little bit.
Most certainly, and I think in a situation like this, Narkotikz really would have wished that he was on the coin, as it would have provided him a really solid turn 2 play, letting him coin out the Hyena. So possibly with the or coining out the Rat Pack rather. So
we'll see now, because Goodlife has the exact same decision he had to make before: Mana Worm on the board with Primordial Glyph in hand. So he's once again going to have to make the exact same decision as to whether he goes face or trades. We'll see if he thinks better of his previous strategy. And no, he makes the same decision this time. So clearly he was comfortable with that decision.
Yeah, it appears so. And it's certainly a very scary thing to do against a Hunter who really has the ability to leverage additional beasts that are sitting around in play with cards like Houndmaster and Scavenging Hyena. It'll be really interesting to see if that decision comes back to bite him.
Yeah, for sure. I thought that maybe with the benefit of hindsight, he might have chosen to make that play a little differently, but it appears not.
No, it seems not. That being the case, he does have the option to clear the board at some point later on with a Volcanic Potion, so perhaps he's just simply not concerned about the 1-1, feeling that it might be an inconsequential body, feeling comfortable with both Fireball and Volcanic in his hand.
Right. So he will go ahead and put the Secret down, and we will see Mana Worm get pumped up to 3. Now again, here's that Crackling Razor Maw that we talked about before. No amazing options on the side, so we'll just take the trade. I would assume the Rat Pack will be trading into the Mana Worm and getting him 3 1/1s in return.
Yeah, there is an interesting question point as to whether or not you play around the Volcanic Potion by not deploying the Scavenging Hyena. And it looks like he opts just to squeeze in an additional hero power. I'm wondering if he's expecting a Volcanic Potion out of his opponent.
It's a very real possibility, and we'll see how... I was going to say, we'll see which Volcanic Potion Goodlife felt like he wanted to play there, because he did have the option of playing the 1-cost one and then coining out the Cabal Crystal Runner to have a 5-power minion on board.
Yeah, and I feel like that might have been a mistake, as it does kind of put the ball in Narkotikz' court, and does return Goodlife to a defensive position where he has to try and fight the board. Right. And I think that the real key to beating a Hunter deck is being able to gain the board, control the board.
Really feel bad play for Goodlife, where he feels the need to fireball just a 4/3.
Yeah, and I feel like that's not going to work out. Again, not giving any consideration to the fact that he's leaving a beast in play.
Yeah, and now we see a really angry boar on the board here. Narkotikz definitely has board control.
Yeah, and we're seeing a coin Firelands Portal. Guessing he's looking for a high-value 5-drop.
That was about as badly as that could have gone.
Just about, and that is unfortunately going to put him in the position where his minion's going to be able to be cleared away pretty easily with a card like Tundra right now.
Yeah, can take care of that, and that's exactly what we're going for. Yeah, and I think Face is definitely the place here. And I think just squeezing in the hero power is right, set the mage to 5 health. I honestly like the hero power better than Scavenging Hyena. Right now, in this position, I think every hero power you can squeeze in is valuable.
Yes,
although to be fair, I was forgetting about the Tundra Rhino, so this Hyena does still get in 2 damage, so I guess that's fine either way.
Yes, and luckily it appears that Narkotikz did not, as he does get to set his opponent down to a precarious 5 life, and with a kill command in his hand, unless Goodlife is able to find a way to clear away every beast in play, and find an ice block which he doesn't have access to.
Well, he has to play the Volcanic Potion, so he can clear the beasts, but kill command plus hero power is still 5 damage, so that's going to be it.
Yeah, and I honestly feel that had he made the decision earlier to use the cheaper Volcanic Potion and deploy a minion alongside it, he might have been in a slightly better position, not giving his opponent the opportunity to push so much damage with the Stone Tusk Boar.
Right, and you know what, I will say, especially having watched the way Goodlife played in the last series, it's kind of an uncharacteristic mistake from him, where I really feel like that play made a whole lot of sense for a lot of different reasons, and I don't know if he just missed it or was maybe playing a little greedy and felt like he could get away with not putting anything on the board in that turn.
The only other thing that I can think of is that perhaps he's just not as experienced with the Hunter matchup as we think he might be. Hunter is not a common deck to see on ladder, and when playing against somebody who's a real veteran of the class, if you're not familiar with what they can do, it can really punish you in games like that. So it looks like Narkotikz has locked it up 2-0. So with that, where do you think Goodlife is sitting right now? What's in his head?
I think he's sitting on, oh crap, what have I done? I think there were a lot of ways for him to have won that game. Again, we talked about the decision to not trade into the Jewel Macaw originally, and then leaving up other beasts as well, not playing around things like Crackling Razormaw or Houndmaster, which you don't need to have played against a lot of hunters to realize that those are cards that are pretty much always going to be in the deck. I haven't seen a hunter list in the Ungorom meta that has not run Crackling Razormaw and Houndmaster. So I think we've said pretty much everything there is to say. Goodlife will have to overcome quite the hurdle if he wants to get back in this. So let's let our competitors know that they can go ahead and play what could be the final game of this series.
Oh, yeah, it's streaming. Yeah.
Like maybe 2?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
All right.
Alrighty, so looks like they are getting started.
Fantastic, and let's dive right in.
And go ahead ahead and getting into spectating.
So, fun fact: we had actually ended up delaying this match series a week due to internet issues at Justice's location. So it's good to see that they've persisted on.
Clearly, everything's been resolved. So we can see that, as I expected, it is a Pirate Warrior, which... Well, I will say that Goodlife has one of the most important cards possible in this matchup, which is Potion of Madness. And
Yeah.
we do see a very quick turn to Radiant Elemental into Power Word Shield for Goodlife, which is certainly strong.
Agreed, and it does look like Goodlife's hand does match up rather well against some of the early game threats, given that he does have the Potion of Madness and the Shadow Word Pain to help stymie the early damage that Pirate Warrior is known for being able to push, and then with the Dragonfire Potion later on to help clean away some of the larger minions.
Right, and this is not exactly the opening Narkotikz would have hoped for, as he has to play the upgrade just to get a 1-3 weapon. We will see the Coin Bloodsail Raider into Patches going face, but this really doesn't feel that good for him, as Goodlife has the option. He can just Shadow Word Pain the 3-3, he can Potion of Madness plus trade to clear both minions, and it looks like that's the way he's going to go with it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see these kind of two decks line up, as we do see that the Priest deck crumpled rather quickly against the Shaman deck in Game 1. So it's interesting to see how just the texture of the draws have really changed the dynamic of Goodlife's chances in this matchup.
Oh yeah, I mean a pretty good start for him, and if we're being honest, a pretty terrible start for Narkotikz. So now he has to make the decision: does he Heroic Strike just to clear the Radiant Elemental, or does he play the Bloodsail Cultist just to get a 3-4 body on the board? Neither one is something he really wants to be doing in this position. So he's really going to have to decide which one makes more sense.
Yeah, and it looks like he goes with a 3-4, looking to try and get some persistent minion damage out of the cards in his hand. As Pirate Warrior, while it does have a lot of reach, does not necessarily have the ability to push all 30 points of damage directly from hand the way that a class like Mage can.
Right, no, absolutely not. It is something that definitely needs to establish a bit of a board presence before closing things out. Now again, Goodlife has an interesting decision here, because if he plays the Twilight Drake, it is just a 4-5, which is still a pretty reasonable minion against Pirate Warrior. Can clear pretty much everything and live, with the exception, of course, of dealing with the Arcanite Reaper, but it does leave his Radiant vulnerable, so he will just go ahead and Shadow Word Pain to clear and heal it back up. A very quick decision on the Corcoran. I was wondering if he might consider a Spellbreaker, but he will go ahead and clear it. Of course, Priest, one of the classes that does not have the ability to easily just deal 1 damage to a minion. I guess unless we were to count the New Spirit Lash, but given that that is not an option yet for these.
Although I guess we've also forgotten about the Priest's, N'Zoth First Mate or upgrade, which also gives it the ability to deal 1 point of damage.
Of course. How silly of us to forget about all that.
Yeah, but it looks like he opts for Heroic Strike, looking to burn the opponent out from a higher life total, it seems.
Apparently.
So I think it's really important for Narkotikz at this stage of the game to make the decision that he's not going to win the board at this point. So he needs to be able to start pushing damage in order to ensure that he has the ability to actually close out the game before it slips away from him.
Right, with that said, Goodlife's still sitting on 29 life right now. So even pushing 9 here, he's still on 20 with the ability to easily clear this Corcoran. This feels like it's going to be a tough one for Narkotikz. I feel like Goodlife has the tools to deal with the pressure Narkotikz is going to attempt to put on him.
Most certainly. And the healing of the 5/2 might be a greedy move, in my opinion. I feel like in a matchup against a deck like Pirate Warrior, you really need to be able to respect their ability to close out a game from medium to low life totals, and not taking the opportunity to heal himself, versus healing a 5/2, which is a stat line that I don't feel that Pirate Warrior is going to be especially easy at clearing without wasting significant resources to do so.
Well, and I think that's kind of the point, really, is that, especially with the Reaper already on board, his ability to deal with a 5-2 versus a 5-4 is basically the same. I don't think if he can clear the 5-2, he can probably clear the 5-4, whether it be with an Arcanite Reaper, whether it be with a Kor'kron Elite. If he wants to clear it, I think anything that he would use to clear a 5-2 can also clear a 5-4, so I agree with you that, I mean, I guess he was just prioritizing the card draw from the Northshire Cleric, but perhaps worrying more about your overall life total rather than one additional card was a consideration, though we do see that his hand is not super proactive, so he might have just been looking for additional tools, understanding where he's at in this game.
And an interesting decision to clear away the five attack minion here. What do you make of that?
I think he's really just hoping that he can get this Frothing Berserker to stick, and have it grow huge. Again, hoping for nothing like a Dragonfire Potion or a Shadow or Death, that kind of thing. I think that's really the play that he's looking for and hoping for.
I see. Although, usually when Pirate Warrior decks get to this stage of the game, it's to a point where if they haven't killed the opponent already, they're going to have a difficult time closing out the game beyond this turn. Do you think this game may have slipped away from Narkotikz here?
I think it's an uphill battle for him, certainly. We do see both Dragonfire Potions in hand, plus a Shadow Word Pain. Now, obviously, Dragonfire Potion on this particular turn doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him. But he can still Pain the Frothing, and yeah, I do wonder. Again, Narkotikz did have a particularly poor opening, so I think he's just trying to make the best of the hand he was dealt. But it's a tough one. I will say this, too. There is a Mortal Strike in the deck, which is not nearly as common in Pirate Warrior as it used to be. And that was a misplay. That was straight up a misplay. With Mortal Strike in hand already, he armored up first and then attacked the minion.
Yeah, and I think that this just might come down to Narkotikz not being as familiar with Warrior as his other two classes, it seems.
Yeah, I definitely say so. I mean, I said he's playing what looks like a slightly older list, because again, almost all competitive Pirate Warriors have cut Mortal Strike. And B, if you are playing Mortal Strike, you always attack before armoring up. You want your life total to be lower. So I'm not really sure where he's going with this right now. And again, I think his lack of familiarity with the class or with the deck as a whole is starting to show.
Most certainly. And it looks like Goodlife's able to utilize that Heroic Strike that he picked up earlier, dropping him to a pretty low life total. I personally wouldn't be that comfortable, even with the poor draw that Pirate Warrior has produced here. He's still more than capable of closing out a game from 16 life against a Priest, so certainly a risky proposition, I would say.
Absolutely. I understand. I mean, he felt he needed to clear the minion, and I do get that, but yeah, suddenly he is in a spot where it might not be so easy. So even with the Twilight Drake clearing, we see he actually has 11, 12 damage right now. Between just the weapon, the Heroic Strike, and the Mortal Strike is 12. So
getting pretty close to lethal.
Yeah. Now we have to assume that Goodlife will heal himself on this turn, but that still leaves Narkotikz actually just 2 damage off.
Yeah, which means that he has a ton of live draws, including cards like Leroy Jenkins.
Right, Leroy.
And if he chooses
Kor'kron, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's only played 1, right?
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
So he will take the Ungoro pack I was going to say, if he plays the Ungoro pack, that's game.
Yeah, correctly recognizing that his life total is in fact a valuable resource in this game.
Right. So we'll see.
Wisely keeping the opponent a little bit healthy to play around Mortal Strike.
So it looks like he's just going to go ahead and Heroic Strike. Use up the weapon charge.
Yeah.
I think your play here is pretty much just play the Frothing armor up, tell him to deal with it, because the Frothing can just clear the Twilight Drake, which I think you're okay with making that trade at this point. Just to take some damage off of the opponent's board, but he chooses to hold it, and I don't know why, because I understand. All right, he's not really getting, he's not able to pump the Frothing Berserker, but you're at a position in this game where that's not how you win. And there's really never going to be a time where he can against this kind of board.
Right.
So I'm not really sure what holding it does. We will see the Ungoro pack come out with. We do see an Elemental and Pyros plus Kalimos. If he can
and that actually
the Elemental, live till next turn, and then Kalimos to heal himself for 12, that would be huge.
Do not give him that. That was not a good move.
I am not...
Well, maybe it was, actually. I take that back. I spoke a little bit too hastily. Putting a 2/6 in play when you had the ability to clear all 3 of the minions does mean that effectively you've shut out multiple draws from Narkotik's deck, including Blue Ridge.
I don't agree with the Glimmer Root. I think he had to play the Pyros there to activate Kalimos for next turn.
Yeah, that's the only way that you could have really been sure to clinch out this game. As it stands, if you put your opponent to too low of a life total, you could easily die to double Mortal Strike. And in fact, even just now, he could have died to double Mortal Strike, regardless of the life total.
Yeah, I think a mistake was made here. I think you had to play the Pyros. With that said, how much damage do we have here? It's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 6. There's actually 16 damage on the side of Goodlife, and he did take a Core Crown Elite. So maybe it all really just doesn't matter.
I mean, either way, it's still objectively a poor move, because even if that's the case, if he had played Pyros, he still would have had lethal with Kalimos regardless, since Kalimos can deal damage to face.
More like the wrong play just going unpunished. And we do see the consequences of the Frothing having not been played the turn before, and playing it now in basically the same position, realizing, oh wait, I probably should have done that last turn. We will see Goodlife take game 3, and personally I'm glad, because I think that 3-0 sweeps are boring. So it did,
and definitely a morale boost.
Yeah, and for sure. And so now you say, okay, maybe this isn't over just yet. And of course we know that Goodlife does like his priest. So getting a win with it has to feel good. So now where do we stand? Now we're looking at 2-1. Again, Goodlife still has to beat Pirate Warrior with both Paladin and Mage, but that's not impossible. Again, depending on the kind of deck that Goodlife takes, if it is a more control-y defensive Paladin with a good draw, as you, I'm sure, as a Paladin enthusiast yourself can attest, if you're not in a terrible position by turn 6 and you can Spike Root Steed pretty much any minion at all, it's almost game against Pirate Warrior right then and there.
Yeah, and it's huge. So, it's a huge deal for sure, since Pirate Warrior does have a hard time clearing away taunts. So, that being said, I'm certainly going to be interested to see how exactly this looks going forward. I'll be interested to see whether or not Narkotik's unfamiliarity with Pirate Warrior could lead to some poor mulligan decisions, since I would say that of the 3 decks that Goodlife had on his lineup, that Priest was probably his best matchup.
Maybe, and maybe so. So I think it might have been, but again, as I said, with Paladin, it really will come down to the draw very heavily, because honestly, Spike Root Steeding, even just a Silverhand Recruit, if he's not just about dead by that point, can be a game-winning play, because now you're talking about a 3/7 taunt that summons a 2/6 taunt when it dies, and unless Narkotik's has exactly Spellbreaker at that point, it's super difficult for the Pirate Warrior player to get past that kind of thing. Now, of course, again, that does require him to not be dead or just about dead by that point in the game, which is really, I think, the question. And then with the Mage, you are looking at things like Volcanic Potion, which is 2 damage, which doesn't always clear the board, but can make it so you can at least trade fairly easily and get rid of the Pirate Warrior's threats. I don't know what list Goodlife is running. I will say that more recently, a lot of Secret Mages have begun including Ice Block. And sometimes against that super aggressive deck, getting that 1 extra turn might be just what you need to turn things around. So it really will depend on kind of what list he's running, but there are ways for the Secret Mage to be able to win that matchup as well. So is it going to be easy for Goodlife? No. But it's certainly possible. And I will say that as we kind of pointed out during the last game, Narkotikz made a couple questionable decisions, and again, we talked about this is out of his entire lineup, this is the deck that he has the least experience with, or least familiarity with, and that showed through in the last game, and that could be something that could swing things Goodlife's way if the cards fall the right way for him.
Most certainly. And so with that, let's go ahead and let the players know that they can begin, and we'll be able to get this match started. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, as am I. I think suddenly this went from, oh my goodness, Goodlife is getting stomped, to, things are actually kind of interesting now. And that's fun. I like that. And particularly if Goodlife can win this extremely important Game 4, then suddenly we're, at a spot where I don't know if he's favored, but things become really interesting.
Yeah, most certainly. And the thing is with the Pirate Warrior is that if you're not super familiar with the class, it can turn a lot of your matchups that are normally kind of borderline into not necessarily good ones. You do lose a lot of percentage points by making some careless plays here or there, and in close matchups, those can definitely cost you. So, again, definitely really looking forward to this next match. Any prediction as to what deck Goodlife is going to bring?
My guess would be Paladin. I think he's just slightly more comfortable with it. Compared to the Mage, we've seen him play a little bit more. I think that'll be it. And I do want to add that we're seeing now, like as we just saw in that last game, that the perception that some members of the community have that, oh, aggro is just brain dead and you just, put things on the board, you click face and you win is clearly incorrect. And we see that the difference that experience with that style of deck can have, particularly against a competent opponent. We're not talking about rank 15 on the ladder here. We're talking about someone who is, a legend capable player, and the difference that can make, and that it's, there's definitely, no matter what kind of deck you're playing, whether it be aggro, combo, mid-range control, whatever it is, there's always decisions to be made, and making the wrong decision can cost you.
Most certainly.
So
again, let's go ahead and let the players know they can begin.
Yep. I let them know. We're just waiting for them to start things up here.
Perfect.
But yeah, I think that was just a good lesson for the masses in no aggro is not just drag mouse to face and win. I think it's an important.
Certainly not. Most certainly.
So
are the players experiencing technical difficulties or?
I don't know. Oh, there they go. I was wondering why I was suddenly unable to type in the chat, but that is why. All right, they are getting started. So we will switch over to their perspective. Very quickly, all three cards mulliganed away from Narkotikz, which I think was the correct decision. We do see a slightly
inclined to agree.
opening for him here, as he does have a solid turn 1 play with the deck into patches if he wants it, which I imagine he will.
Yeah, and assuming that he doesn't draw it right away.
Alright, we do see a Spike Ridge Steed in hand for Goodlife, and a Forbidden Healing as well. So you were absolutely correct. This is a very late-game control-oriented deck. No turn 2 play for Narkotikz. Obviously, he would have loved to pick up a War Axe there, which he then could have upgraded on turn 3 with Bloodsail Cultist, but no such luck.
Yeah, not this time.
So we will see a coin into Stonehill Defender. And
against... most certainly. And one thing to note is that Paladin, as a deck, has a lot of taunts available to it that the control variant of the deck just naturally has. As we found out early on into Pirate Warrior's life, life as a powerful deck, is that one of the stronger strategies against the deck is to utilize a wall of taunts to protect your life total. As a class, they don't have a ton of efficient tools to clear away high health taunt minions.
Right. And so now Goodlife has some interesting options available to him. Equality is probably not the right move because it will clear away his taunt. However, he does have the option of, say, trading into a minion with Stonehill Defender and then Aldoring the Frothing Berserker back down to 1 attack. And then we're also putting a 3/3 body on the board. I think that's a pretty reasonable play. His other option, of course, is to play that Squirming Tentacle that he picked up off of the Stonehill Defender.
Yeah, and it looks like he's looking to clear away the South Sea deckhand, or at least was thinking about it. Perhaps if he takes him on, he'll think better of it.
No, he's going for it, and I think it will be the Aldor play.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And I do think that was probably his best move.
I agree. It was the first play that came to mind for me, and I think it was one that made the most sense.
Yeah, although being able to play another Frothing Berserker could certainly lead to a lot of pain for Goodlife here, especially because he is going to be clearing away that 1/2 taunt. Although his decision to not wait, or to not play the Frothing, means that he may be looking to deploy a 5/4 here, or a taunt to protect
it. Either a 5/4, the Corsair, or even just Mortal Strike away the 3/3. Not sure where he was.
Yeah, I really don't like that though. I really don't like that move though, especially going into turn 4 against a control paladin deck. And you don't know for certain that it's a control deck, but Aldor is usually a pretty good indication. It's really, really risky to do that going into a true silver champion turn. So I think that deploying another Frothing would have probably resulted in net more damage, or at the very least resulted in an awkward turn perhaps for Goodlife.
No, I agree. So now he does have the option of, say, trading and then playing another Aldor, which looks like exactly what he's going for. And,
yeah, and unlike...
So...
Oh, that was a huge draw, though.
Oh, yeah, the War Axe is really big. That was a huge draw. I was going to say, what Goodlife wants to be able to do is to stick a couple minions on the board so that he has something to Spike Ridge Steed on 6.
Yeah, that being said, though, this Stampeding Kodo is going to be a really strong way to get himself back onto the board, as it's going to clear away one of the Frothings and leave Narkotikz here with not very much to fight against it.
No, I mean, all he can really do is weapon plus trade and leave the... or just go face, which I think is what he's going to have to do. I don't think there's really much sense in trading here.
Yeah, I don't see a way that Narkotikz wins this game if he chooses to trade into that 3/5.
Which is maybe something that he learned a little bit from last game when he was trading a little bit unnecessarily.
Yeah, and I think that might just be a product of him not being very familiar with... Oh, but you know what, too? Perhaps there is some consideration to not leaving a minion in play for Spike Ridge Steed.
Right.
So yeah, perhaps being just unfamiliar with... Oh, but that was a big draw.
Heroic Strike is interesting. Although he doesn't make a decision.
I really like Cultist plus Mortal Strike here.
Bless Cultist, yeah. You can Bless Cultist plus Mortal Strike, which I think is fine, although that does leave him without a way of clearing the back end of the Steed for the time being.
Right, but at this point, you're not going to win the game by not clearing the 5/8, so you do have to commit those resources at some point in time, and being able to do that without sacrificing the 5/4 is certainly something that would be appealing.
I agree.
And I'm beginning to wonder whether or not it was a good idea to leave that Kodo up. If he didn't, it would have probably meant that Goodlife was deploying a Tentacle there plus a Hydrologist. But overall, I think this wall of taunts may be a pretty difficult mountain to overcome here.
Yeah, we do see another Stonehill Defender. I don't know if it's coming down this turn, but it does mean that more taunts are in the not-too-distant future as well. There is also in the hand, at any time he chooses to use it, the full board clear of Equality Consecrate, or Equality Pyro, depending on which way he wants to do it.
Most certainly, and if Narkotikz isn't able to find a way to start pressuring the opponent's life total and clear away some of these taunts in a clean fashion, pretty soon Goodlife is going to be able to deploy a 20-point heal from healing, Forbidden Healing, and that would pretty much put a nail in his coffin, so to speak.
And even if he doesn't want to go for a full heal, even on a slightly later turn, he does have the option of, say, Equality, then Wild Pyro, Forbidden Healing. You know, say on turn, even if it is on turn 10, it would still heal him for 12, while providing a board clear and leaving himself with a minion in play. Although
and it
do just
does look like he's going to...
Well, there is the Equality Consecrate right there. I'm not sure if I
I did not
love
like
that
that move.
play, although we do see no other minions in hand on Narcotikz End at that time, which made it kind of okay. But without that information that there were no other minions in hand, I don't think it was necessarily his best option, but given what's happening right now, it might work out. Because he might be forced to Mortal Strike this 2-1, just to push the 5 damage to face, which does not feel good.
Right, and yeah, and the thing is too is that had he cleared away the Kodo 2 turns earlier, he wouldn't have had a weapon in play for when he drew this N'Zoth's first mate. So granted, the texture of the game would have looked very different at that time, but certainly the fact that he still has his 5/1 weapon equipped now is leading to some awkward application of potential face damage here.
Right, so like if you want to play the N'Zoth's first mate, your only option is to Mortal Strike the 2-1, push face for 5 with the War Axe, and then play the first mate, which again does not feel great from the side of Narcotikz. And he might
but the thing is, if you're not doing that, I don't know if I like that move.
I mean, he's
I don't
electing to play it a little more slowly, but that might come back to bite him.
Oh, that would
Stonehill Defender is offering Sunkeeper Tarim, which I think is a great outcome for him. Hydrologist is offering Getaway Kodo, Repentance, or Eye for an Eye. Again, apologies to spectators that I can't show that, but Getaway Kodo I think is absolutely the right decision there. So now suddenly we see this wall of taunts, and honestly, even though none of them are particularly strong, I think it's enough. Mortal Strike can clear one, Upgrade can clear another. So if, let's say, we Mortal Strike the 2/4, Upgrade, and clear the Stonehill Defender with the weapon. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think he's just trying to be very disciplined with his Mortal Strikes here.
Yeah.
Possibly figuring that if he can, lull the opponent into a full sense of security, he might be able to whittle away the taunts in time to push 12 damage to face with that with those strikes. But with the Sunkeeper Tarim coming down, I don't think that he's going to have the time to be able to execute such a strategy.
No. And he's still above the 12 threshold for Mortal Strike. Not that that's particularly relevant, and that's the game. There's really no possible way for Narcotikz to come back from this. And this is exactly what I was talking about in the pregame and why I felt Goodlife should take the Paladin, because there really was no way that if he can get to this point of the game, there's no way for the Pirate Warrior to get past this many taunts.
No, it just simply does not have the resources or the card draw in order to pull it off. So I would be expecting a concession from Narcotikz at some point in the near future.
Yeah.
Because even though he's able to clear away 3 points of damage here, there's no avenue to victory beyond this. It would simply be a formality, allowing the opponent to reduce him to 0.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And this is also part of why we've seen most Pirate Warriors drop Mortal Strike, is we see how conditional the card actually is. I mean, direct damage sounds great in theory, but we're starting to see how it doesn't actually do that much in a lot of situations. In the situations where you kind of need something to work, and then kind of all you have is Mortal Strike.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I mean, I guess he wanted to hold N'Zoth's first mate, and I can actually see reasons for that. But there's nothing here. I mean, I think Narcotikz is just not conceding out of pride, which I can respect. But there is no draw in the deck that changed the situation here.
Most certainly. So it's certainly just academic at this point for Goodlife as he watches his opponent deploy his cards. So
there's the right there.
Yeah, although I will note that if you're going to BM before you concede, it was certainly a good call to not reveal the Mortal Strike, as currently Goodlife does not know that he plays 2 of them. So revealing the second one would provide the opponent with additional information.
That is a fair point. All right, so suddenly, what was looking really bad for Goodlife has turned into Game 5, winner take all.
Yeah, and here we are again.
Here we are with
Goodlife was able to.
Oh, and do you have a mouth? There he is.
I do sometimes.
So this, as I said before we got into this game, if Goodlife finds a way to win, which I felt like he could, it makes things very, very interesting. Because I will say that out of his 3 decks, Mage is the one that's probably going to have the hardest time beating the Pirate Warrior. Again, I don't know if he's running Ice Block or not, which could be a factor. But if he gets a decent draw, the deck is certainly capable of winning that matchup. And so I think this last game really is going to largely come down to the kind of draws that we see.
Yeah, and it's going to be pretty huge. I feel that Narkotikz definitely had the opportunity to close out that the priest game earlier, and I think that his unfamiliarity with the deck really cost him. I feel that the Paladin deck is it's not a good matchup for Pirate Warrior. Ever since Spikered Steed was introduced to the metagame, it just has become a real difficult time for Pirate Warrior in the meta, and I feel that those Paladin decks that do utilize the card are one of the factors that do keep the deck in check on the ladder. So without further ado, I think it's about time that we allow the players to finish their set and conclude the game.
Let them go ahead. Let them know they can play what suddenly is a Game 5 and the final game of the series. And yeah, it's actually really exciting to see this play out this way. Again, there's this perception that Pirate Warrior is unfair, aggro is this, aggro is that, Blizzard please nerf, whatever. But we see some of the shortcomings of the deck, and the fact that it's not oppressive in the way that a lot of the truly overpowered decks of Hearthstone past have been. We see there are definitely counters. We see that when not played optimally, there's a lot of ways that it can go wrong.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be really interested to see whether or not Goodlife is able to pull this out and clinch the set. Now, it does look like we have a bit of a odd hand for Narkotikz. It looks like he's lingering a little bit as to whether or not he should sit on these cards or not. How do you feel about this opening hand right now? What cards would you look at mulliganing for Narkotikz here?
Well, there's a lot of difficult decisions to be made here. You keep the Bloodsail Raider, I think, 100% of the time. I think ditching the Knockout Corsair is fine. And now you have to decide, on the coin, do you keep both 3-drops? So obviously his line of thinking was a little different than mine. He's highly valuing Frothing Berserker in this matchup, which I think is okay. But then getting rid of his 2-drop was questionable to me, especially in a deck that is running 2 Mortal Strikes and therefore has plenty of opportunity to miss his 2-drop. I think that what he was thinking,
I think that what he was doing was he was anticipating to coin out the Frothing Berserker on turn 2 to try and take an aggressive stance on what's going on in the game. And you can see him doing that here, where he's not trading in with the patches now, despite making it vulnerable to a card to the Fire Blast.
Right. Which and I'm sure that's exactly what he was thinking. But I think the fallacy in that strategy is already become apparent, because in a deck that is running 2 Bittertide Hydras, is running 2 Mortal Strikes, you have a lot of ways of that plan going poorly, and as we see him considering just a weapon swing without coining out the Frothing Berserker, we're already seeing why that might not work out the way he had hoped.
Yeah, and if he's not coining out the Frothing Berserker, then I really have to question the decision to mulligan the 2-drop when he did, as that's really the only valid line that I can think of as to why you would make that decision.
Right, and again,
we can see this.
We're also consider the fact that he could have just kept both. I mean,
it's not like it was a binary decision.
Right. I mean, so I guess his idea was, I'm going to coin out Frothing Berserker on 2, therefore I need to mulligan everything else to try to find a 1-drop. I mean, that's
perhaps,
basically...
and I think that might just be his. Honestly, I think that might just be his hunter tendencies kind of showing, as in a deck like Hunter, it's a lot more important to be able to get that early 1-drop minion on the board, but with a deck like Pirate Warrior, it's not nearly as critical as it is to just be able to stick a minion at all. So I think that definitely there might have been a little bit of a stream crossing there.
that is a possibility. We see why he held the coin, because now there is a Bittertide Hydra. which, as of right now, there's no incredibly clean way for him to deal with it, although the Cone of Cold is certainly a good one. Will prevent the minion from attacking while also dealing 3 damage to Narkotikz.
Yeah, but at the same time, Goodlife is going to be looking at these pair of 8 attack minions, and as of right now, his hand is not equipped to handle it.
No, it sure is not.
I mean, his best bet is to clear away one of them, but that still means he's going to eat lots of damage next turn.
With that said, right now, Bittertide Hydra will have dealt more damage to Narkotikz than it will have to Goodlife. It'll have dealt 9 to Narkotikz, while the next one will deal 8 to Goodlife, but that second one is not immediately at threat of leaving the board unless it's Fireball Volcanic Potion.
Or Fireball Ping. But yeah, you're right,
Fireball kill it.
Volcanic Potion. You're right. So with that being the case, that would mean that Goodlife is taking his entire turn off just to clear away an 8/8. And in the meantime, Narkotikz has the ability to develop another minion or 2 onto the board here. I think if I'm a Narkotikz, I definitely give some consideration to upgrading plus the Blood Sail. Plus the taunt, that is, just to kind of, or the Dread Corsair rather. And then also the Blood Sail Raider. That kind of provides the widest array of minions.
Yeah, I mean, you can do all 3. I mean, the only reason I think not to do that is just if you're scared of Flame Strike, which is kind of a 50-50 card to be in the deck. Some Secret Mages run it, some don't.
But I think at this point, if it doesn't make sense to play around Flame Strike, because if Goodlife's turn 7 is just a Flame Strike and leaving that 8 attack minion in play, I don't think he wins that game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you that I don't think it's a card that's worth playing around in this situation. So, yeah, we see the immediate Fireball and Volcanic Potion coming out of Goodlife. Now, things get pretty interesting from here. Both players have the ability to deal a large amount of face damage at once. However, Narkotikz is able to do it faster because he has minions on board, whereas Goodlife's damage will be spread out over a few turns and he needs to find something great off Primordial Glyph. So actually, at this point, Narkotikz looks to be in a pretty good spot to win this game.
Yeah, and again, this just comes down to Goodlife's hand just not really matching up very well against the minions and the threats that Narkotikz has been able to deploy. So even though he got off to a kind of a slow start...
Just to be clear, that is Molten Reflection, Polymorph, and Mirror Image were the options off that Primordial Glyph.
And that Mirror Image may be critical in Goodlife's ability to discover a line to not lose this game, certainly. Especially paired with the counterspell that he just picked up off of the...
right. Which he can...
Off of the Arc opting to remove 3 points of damage instead with his hero power.
I think is fine.
Is it though? I think that means it's still the game.
Yeah, that'll do it. Wow.
And just like that, an explosive end to a real roller coaster of a ride of a match.
Oof.
Wow, what a ride!
That was impressive.
Yeah, that was something else.
That went from honestly Narkotikz making some questionable decisions to it just kind of working out for him. I mean, if we're being perfectly frank.
Yeah, wow. And you can tell right there that that being able to drop in those Bittertide Hydras one after another was just able to provide Narkotikz with the leverage that he needed in order to really pressure that life total there of Goodlife and force him to be on the defensive, which is a position that you're going to be against Pirate Warrior most of the time. But the games that you see that the deck loses are the ones where the Pirate Warrior is forced into a defensive posture by losing the board. So yeah, wow.
That was I don't know why that game is almost leaving me kind of speechless, because we talked about the fact that honestly Narkotik's mulligan decision was questionable, to say the least, and it almost punished him very hard, because we saw that early game did not work out the way that he had hoped. He was not looking to armor up on turn 2. That was not the play he was looking for. We saw that things didn't pan out the way that he had planned for, But then suddenly, Goodlife kind of had no plays of his own, which
Right, and I think
led
that
to
is a
turn 4 and 5 Bittertide Hydras.
yeah, and I think that that's something that Mage struggles with is at times you do end up with hands that are just not very proactive, and that's not a place you want to be against a deck that takes such an aggressive stance on the game like Pirate Warrior. So I think that this was a case where I feel that again Mage's weakness of because you could see as soon as Narkotikz coined out a Bittertide Hydra on that fourth turn of the game, Goodlife had no other choice but to simply fireball and ping it.
Right,
Or to a Cone of Cold.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then when the second Bittertide Hydra came out, and there was no Cone of Cold anymore, so you couldn't freeze both of them at the same time, it was, oh, now what? So it definitely made things interesting, because if you think of a world where Goodlife had some more proactive plays on, say, turn 3 and 4, if he could have pushed some damage, because... oh, look, Owen, you're sideways. There he is. If he could have pushed some more damage early with some board presence, Narkotics' life total was somewhat in danger. If those fireballs were able to, say, go face instead of to minions, and while he was pushing minion damage, and he still had a Firelands portal in hand, it's conceivable that Goodlife could have won that game right about the turn that Narkotics did, maybe a turn earlier, if he had been able to establish something on the board. And you know what? Even something like he had Kirin Tor in hand, if perhaps he had, say, a Mirror Entity to copy one of his Bittertide Hydras. Something as simple as that could have been the game going the other way. But again, he had kind of nothing for those turns. And because he had nothing, he had to use his spells completely reactively. And they just weren't enough to stop the onslaught of multiple 8/8s.
Yeah, and part of me wonders if whether or not deploying the Cone of Cold on that turn was really the right decision, given that he couldn't do anything else with his turn, since all it really did was buy him a turn. So, yeah, it looks like it didn't really work out too well for Goodlife, but hell, it was a great set, and I'll be looking forward to seeing both these competitors in the future on other exhibition matches.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a lot of fun, and as I said, it was a set that at first looked really bad for Goodlife, and while he did end up falling, the fact that he was able to push it to 5 games, I think, was fairly impressive. With that said, I don't know if you realize this, we have a pattern here. We've in every series that we've done, the person that had won the previous series lost the next one. What's going on here?
Well, we'll see if it will make it a pattern next time if Narkotics chooses to return to the arena, as it were.
So far, both
we'll see if
Goodlife have been unable to defend the crown. We just keep passing it along.
I see. Well, we'll see what happens next time. And again, it was a heck of a ride. Wow, that last game still is leaving me speechless.
It was. That was definitely something else. I think it was a good way to close out the last series that we'll be doing as part of the Ungoro meta. Definitely looking forward to seeing what Frozen Throne will bring us. I know that I still have some more packs and things. Haven't finished the solo adventure yet, the first wing, so I'm definitely excited to finish that out. There will be some upcoming content from both myself and Owen on our website, which is jdggaming.com. Definitely make sure to check that out if you haven't yet. This game, as well as all games that we've done in the past, will be available on the website, as well as some match write-ups and just some different editorials and analysis articles on different aspects of Hearthstone. So, if you are looking for more of a deeper look into the game, then definitely head over to the site. Don't get me wrong, I love the meme-filled Reddit posts as much as the next guy, but sometimes you want to delve a little deeper into the behind-the-scenes stuff, and that's kind of where Judgment Gaming comes in for you. So again, that is jdggaming.com. This game will be up there within the next day or two, and again, we will have upcoming articles regarding Knights of the Frozen Throne, the cards themselves, what we expect to see from the metagame. In fact, Owen has already put up an article about the state of Warlock, the one class that both players said, nah, I don't think so, for this series, as it is obviously in a terrible state in Ungoro. So Owen kind of did a little dive into what might make it more playable in the Knights of the Frozen Throne meta, and it just might have the tools to make a comeback. So check out
Yeah.
that article for sure.
Yeah, and Warlock has definitely been a real unicorn during this metagame, and I'm looking forward to seeing some options available for it in the future. But read my article to find out my full thoughts on the matter. One thing that I did want to touch upon while we were speaking about the last game is one thing that is definitely important to note is that we did not see either Bittertide Hydra in the first two games.
That's true.
With that, so that does mean that there is a possibility that Goodlife just didn't see the 8-drop minions coming. Now, it's not uncommon for those minions to be in a Pirate Warrior deck nowadays, and that's certainly something else that we can consider that may have impacted his play.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, even knowing that it's a minion that some Pirate Warriors do run, I was actually still a little surprised. I don't know. I had to take a moment to reevaluate things once I saw the Bittertide Hydras enter the hand, because we hadn't seen them yet. So we weren't sure if it was a card Narkotikz was running. So yeah, it definitely changed things. And we saw from how quickly I think Goodlife played, especially on that first Cone of Cold turn, that he might have been taken aback too and was just reacting, I don't know, emotionally,
To an
word,
minion.
but yeah, just kind of reacting impulsively to it, rather than considering exactly, okay, how does this change the game for me? Because if he's running one, he's running two. There's no Pirate Warrior that's running just one Bittertide Hydra. It's either 0 or 2. So,
Most certainly.
I think perhaps that did throw him for a loop a little bit. I know it did for me.
Yeah, certainly. And with that being said, there are still a lot of other cards, and that just goes to show you that even in games where you do play multiple games against a single deck, variance does factor in. Sometimes those two Bittertide Hydras are just on the bottom 15 cards of the library of your deck, and you never see them. So
Exactly. All right, so that will just about wrap it up for us. Again, check out jdggaming.com for all of your deep dive Hearthstone needs. I want to thank Owen for joining me on this cast. We do plan on doing more games together, and we will be planning on having this be a slightly more regular thing. Again, it was intended to be, but significant internet issues on my end, unfortunately, delayed things. Clearly, they're not completely gone yet, but we are will hopefully be getting those resolved in the not too distant future if my internet service provider feels like cooperating with me. But until then, thank you guys for checking out the games, whether it be live or on the VOD, and we will see you soon.
for sure, next time.